It takes about 4 seconds to take a single deep breath. It's also all the time you need to change your career and your life. Hey, I'm Tony Vlahos, Chief Marketing Officer of ExecuNet, and I'm speaking today with Peter Bregman. Hey, Peter.
Hi, Tony.
And Peter, of course, is an acclaimed CEO advisor, leadership consultant, and Wall Street Journal best-selling author. In his rewarding, beautifully written new book, 4 Seconds, Peter gives us a handbook of practical wisdom we can all use to stop counterproductive habits and create the life, work, and career results we want without all the stress. So the new book doesn't come out until February 24th, but today you'll get a good dose of Peter to carry over until then. And by all means, I encourage you to pre-order the book now. So Peter, let's talk about your great new book. Why did you write it?
In 18 minutes, the book that I came out with last, the focus was very much on how to shape your day, how to shape your time, how to manage your priorities in a way that you focus on the things that are most important to you. What I found is that a lot of people did that really well, but and I say we because I suffer from the same struggles that most of my readers suffer from, that how we use that time is the biggest challenge. So yes, it's important that I focus on my top priorities, but what am I doing to move forward on those top priorities? And what are the kinds of things that I do that prevent me from moving forward on those top priorities? So in some ways, if 18 minutes was about what you should be doing, 4 seconds is about how you should be doing it, how you should be doing it to get the results you want.
Right. I'm intrigued by the title. 4 little seconds, right? Can they really make all the difference in our work and in our lives?
You read all sorts of things about change, right? You read that it takes 21 days to change a habit. That some people, that's the short end of the journey. It could take years, and that's true ultimately, right? That we've to change from one person to being a different kind of person in the future takes time. But ultimately, what I realized when I'm about to have a conversation with someone, or I'm about to work on something, that the change happens in an instant, right? That we are habitual, right? We have patterns. When I used to do work in HR consulting, this is now back 20 years, I developed a lot of competency models. What does it take to be successful in a particular job? And the research was really clear that if we could model a job and then find out what people did in the past, we could predict their future. That I could predict the future, and I could predict your future by knowing how you act in the past. Because predictably, you will do the same stuff that you've done in the past, right? So if you really want to hire someone and you want to know how they're going to act, just figure out how they've acted before. And I built a career early on at being able to model jobs. But the truth is, a lot of the ways that we act in the past aren't particularly beneficial to us. If you're in the perfect relationship and you manage that relationship perfectly, and if your career is moving along swimmingly and every move you make is moving you forward in the right way, and if you manage your body and your decisions and your choices perfectly well, then it's not an issue.
Right.
But for most of us, we consistently do make the same mistakes. And the question I was asking for this book is, what does it take to shift that pattern? Right? And it turns out it takes a conscious choice in a second. Meaning I could be on a diet and I can see a plate of cookies and I can say, I'm really on this diet and I committed to this diet. But the choice of whether to eat that cookie or not comes in the moment that I reach for that cookie. That's the moment of change. I can make a decision to reach for the cookie, or I could make a decision not to reach for the cookie. Or in an organizational setting or a career setting, somebody gets angry at me. And I have a choice. How do I respond to that anger in that moment? Do I yell back? Do I back off? Do I run away? And probably all of us have habitual patterns, right? There's something that we always do. And probably sometimes it's effective and other times not effective. And so the idea of 4 seconds is take a deep breath, and make an intentional and a strategic choice about what your next move is going to be. And when you do that, you have the capacity to change your entire life. And so the book talks about that, and then it also talks about a number of things that we consistently do that gets in our way, and what to replace those things with. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, we all have knee-jerk reactions, and the knee-jerk reactions are predictable, and they're actually very similar for a lot of us. And there are things to replace those knee-jerk reactions with that are much more productive, and I put a lot of that stuff in the book.
Cool. And you've organized it brilliantly. Tell me about the main territories you map in this book. There are 3.
Right.
Let's play those back.
Sure. So the first one is about your mindset. Like, how do you think? How do you respond? What's going on inside? Mm-hmm. Like, nobody really knows what's going on inside except for you, right? And so what's going on inside, and is it working? Is it helping you? How do you talk to yourself? How do you pause? How fast are you moving? How are you making decisions? Mm-hmm. What's going on? And to sort of check, and I like to even think of it as updating your mindset, right? To put yourself in the best possible position to be successful. That's the first thing. What state are you in? How do you manage that? The second is your relationships, right? Which is, once you've sort of understood and gotten a handle on, who you are and how you show up, how do you engage with relationships? What happens when someone doesn't meet your expectations? What happens when someone around you struggles with something? How do you respond? Is it useful? Is it not useful? And how to choose responses in a variety of situations that tend to be more productive. And the final one is about your work. How do we bring this to work, right? How do we bring this to our leadership? How do we bring this to professional situations that make a huge difference to our success in life?
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a bit about the first part. And in particular, can you share just a couple of the strategies that readers will discover in part 1 to help them focus, become happier, and more grounded?
Yeah. So I love part 1, and I love it because it slows us down. Mm-hmm. Like, the idea is we have never lived in a time when there are so many demands on us to move so fast and respond so quickly and work so hard. Like, that's just the nature of our lives. And it's very hard to move through your day that fast and make smart choices all the time. It's very hard to do that. And so if the gift of the book is nothing more than getting people to take a few deep breaths during their day,
right,
I think it's been a great success.
Absolutely.
Right? Because I think we could all benefit from having a deeper sense of self. When I wrote 18 Minutes, I asked people to ask a couple of questions to themselves. One is, am I doing what I most need to be doing at the time? That was one of the questions I asked. They have their watch beep every hour, and am I doing what I most need to be doing? And what I found is that I was often maybe doing things I needed to be doing, but it wasn't enough, that question, that I had to ask another question. And that other question is, am I being who I most want to be? Mm-hmm. And there are times when I might have been doing something that was productive, but I wasn't being the kind of person that I wanted to be. Maybe I was being too aggressive. Maybe I was being ambitious in a way that wasn't useful. Maybe I was being sullen. I wasn't showing up the way I wanted to show up. And asking that question really helped me to show up in that way. And what I'm asking people to do in the first section is to really consider how they're showing up, to slow down enough to take a deep breath and say, what is it that I really want? And am I moving forward in the way that I want to move forward?
Right.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been busy all day and then turn around and say, I didn't really move forward in the way that I wanted to move forward. And it's because I'm not pausing enough, because I'm not thinking about the outcome enough, because I'm not taking a sense of where am I? What do I need right now? What am I needing in this situation? What am I going for? I'm just reacting.
You're busy, but maybe not advancing.
Yeah, and I think it's
right?
Reacting versus responding, right?
Right.
I'm reacting to a number of different situations as they occur, as opposed to proactively making choices.
Right.
Right.
I think we can all relate.
Right.
So one of the chapters in the book that I love, is probably one of my favorite in the entire book, is the one on making time for rituals. How can ritual help us to be more productive in our work?
Rituals, which are usually relegated to religious situations,
Yeah.
right? We have a ritual, and before I'm Jewish, and in Judaism there's really a ritual for pretty much everything. There's
Yeah.
a blessing for just about everything that you do. I mean, if you're observant and you follow that. But what happens, and here's an interesting one. So Friday night to Saturday in Judaism is the Sabbath, right? It's Shabbat. And how do you know when it starts and how do you know when it ends? Well, there's a ritual, right? It's called Kiddush. You drink some wine, you light some candles, you drink some wine, you eat some bread, you say a few prayers. And that marks a shift, a change. It says, from this moment until a ritual at the end called Havdalah, 25 hours later, where I light a candle and I go, okay, this is it, I'm going to act differently. I'm going to do things differently. I'm going to be differently in the world. And so one of the challenges that we've just talked about is we're moving so fast and we're moving from one thing. And I pick up the phone and I have a conference call. And then, half the time, my next conference call comes in call waiting. And I have to say, hold on 1 second. I'll be right with you. I go, so literally there's no transition time. And the idea of pausing and saying, okay, this is, in fact, if you noticed, before we did this interview, I don't know if you noticed, I didn't make a big deal about it, but I literally paused for probably 5 seconds, let's call it 4 seconds. I paused for 4 seconds before we were about to shoot, and I shut my eyes. And I just did that to get myself here to say, okay, what is my purpose in this? How do I want to relate to you? How do I want to relate about this book? And I got intentional. It's a ritual that literally took a few seconds, but brought me here. And I can't even immediately tell you what I was doing right before this interview. I know I was doing something, right? Because I've been pretty busy all day. But I'm really here. And after this interview, then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to shift over to whatever's next that I have to do, and I'm going to really bring myself to the present. And I'll set some kind of an intention for myself. How do I want to be in relationship to you during this conversation? How do I want to be in relationship to the people who are listening and watching? And I bring that intention to this conversation, and that's a ritual. It's a ritual to pause briefly before you do something and create an intention, and then move forward with that intention to mark the time. This is the time I'm with Tony.
Right.
In half an hour or 45 minutes, I'll be setting off another piece of time, but I don't want to bring one thing to the other, because that's a way of losing myself in the context of the day.
And I get it, because if we ritualize the day, we find that the time before meetings with individuals or with teams, or the time before we negotiate an offer, the time before we do anything, can be more purposeful, is what I'm picking up.
Yeah.
And if you think about your workday that way, you can actually find lots of moments that need that kind of intensity and focus.
Right.
And that's really cool.
Yeah, I think it's true. And I'll say one other thing, which is I think ritual elevates the action. So if a lot of people might have some ritual around eating, where they say grace, or they say, the idea of saying something, ritualizing the action right before, makes you appreciate it more.
Right.
So you could just jump in and eat your food, but if you pause and say something, and I'm not advocating anything here really in terms of religion or divinity or anything, but when you segment off something that you're doing, an activity, and you give it some element of respect, then your enjoyment out of it, what you get out of it, is much bolder and more powerful. So it's also a way of moving through your day in a way that gives you, a huge reward and payback for segmenting it out and saying, I'm going to be focused.
It's just one of the, I think, novel ways that you're approaching life and career and work through this book. So let's move on to a couple of things about the second part, which is also fabulous, I think. And in it, you share great practical advice on how to best connect with other people.